Hello and welcome to week 3 of American Literature. This week we're taking a little bit of a jump forward in time. So last week we were taking a look at some of the early explorers, the very first Europeans who make their way to the New World. This week we're jumping forward about 128 years to the voyage of the Mayflower, the arrival of the Pilgrims, specifically the Puritans, in what would become New England. So a couple of things to kind of be aware of is that there's a whole lot that happens in those 128 years, right? Colonial expansion continues, and one of the resources I want you to take a look at is this very first documentary that you see listed on the screen. It will give a very brief overview of the colonial expansion between 1492 when Columbus is landing in the Caribbean to 1620 when the Mayflower is landing in what would become Massachusetts. A couple of things to just highlight is that in what will become North America, the first colony is founded in Jamestown, Virginia, and that is founded in 1606. The colony is a failure, right? It fails to establish itself. There's sort of mass hunger. People are not sticking around, and it's reestablished again in 1607. Another key moment to highlight, which we will talk a lot about in subsequent weeks, is the year of 1619. This is the year that the first slave ships arrive in America carrying human slaves, African slaves, and that becomes a very central moment of tension to American history and American literature. So I want to also talk a little bit about the way that this week is organized because there is a lot of information here. You have some reading to do. You're going to read some selections from a text called On Plymouth Plantation by William Bradford. Bradford was one of the leading members of the Mayflower Compact, was central to authoring it. He was a Puritan that was arriving in New England on that ship. I'm also going to ask you to read the Mayflower Compact, which is a very brief document. It's only about a paragraph long. And that Mayflower Compact, some scholars say that it is, or consider it, a kind of predecessor to what will become the U.S. Constitution. But in it, we get some of the ethos of the sort of Puritan worldview. I'm also going to ask you to read The Narrative and Captivity and Restoration of Mary Rowlandson. There are some selections highlighted here for you. I'd like you to read the introduction, what are called removes 1 through 5, and then finally remove 20. So those three texts I want you to kind of chunk together and consider them as a unit. And if I scroll down, you'll see that there is a folder for William Bradford and a folder for Mary Rowlandson. Each of these folders includes some contextual or biographical information, as well as some links to the text that I want you to read. So here you'll get a lecture, a little bit on William Bradford, as well as on the text of Plymouth Plantation, which is really a historical account of the founding of Plymouth. You'll have a link to some information about the Mayflower Compact itself. And then these are selections from what is a much longer text that really documents the founding of this colony and some of the trials and triumphs that the colony goes through. If I take it a little step back and we pull up Mary Rowlandson, we have some historical information about what is happening at the time that she's writing, as well as an argument that perhaps these captivity narratives should be recontextualized or should be thought about with a kind of broader, more critical lens. And then you have a link to the text itself with again, a reminder to read just the introduction, removes 1 through 5, and remove 20. So these two texts, both Bradford and Rowlandson, focus on, in addition to other things, the relationship between settlers and indigenous peoples or native peoples. And so the questions I'd like you to consider when you are reading Bradford and Rowlandson are listed here below. In your own words, who were the Puritans and why did they travel to the New World? Describe the ways that the New World changed between the arrival of Columbus and the Mayflower. Compare William Bradford's treatment of Native people to Mary Rowlandson's. What are the author's attitudes towards Native people? Can you describe the relationship between the Puritan settlers and the natives? And is there anything that sticks out to you from each account? Then I'd like you to compare the ethos of the Mayflower Compact to the Puritans' dealings with Indigenous people of New England. Is there any tension between what you might consider being the spirit of the compact and the realities of colonial life? So we want to really explore some of these tensions that are existing and that are manifesting through the literature between settlers and Indigenous peoples. So this journal assignment, is going to be due on Sunday. If I scroll up here, it lists it. Submit a journal entry by Sunday, February 11th at 11:59 p.m. The other piece of reading is a poem. The poem is by Anne Bradstreet. It's called My Dear and Loving Husband. And you're going to take a quiz on that poem. That quiz is going to ask you to analyze the poem. It's going to walk you through analyzing the poem. And that will be due on Wednesday, February 7th at 11:59 p.m. To access the Anne Bradstreet information, just open the folder here. There is some biographical information at this video, which will help you to complete the analysis. And then there's a link to the poem as well as some background information about the poet and the context in which she is writing. One of the things that I'd like you to consider as you are taking a look at this poem is the tension between Puritan morality or Puritan ethics or Puritan ideals and the emotional connection that the writer feels towards her husband. There's a lot to do this week, but I am, as before, looking forward to reading your ideas and touching base with you through your journals. Thank you.